Good evening. Welcome to the Vampire Book Club. First of all, can you hear me if I tap this microphone? I'm having technical difficulties, so. Oh my God, why am I so blue? All right, that's better. Yes, we always begin the Vampire Book Club. We're dealing with our technical difficulties and what we're drinking today, which is Port de a red wine blend from, I'm guessing, Portugal? We're not here to talk about, but we are here to drink it. I hope you are having a drink with me, because half the fun of book club is drinking wine and talking with your friends about books. And you are all my friends, and we are all here to talk about vampire books. The Vampire Book Club reads one vampire book a month and then discusses it on this live stream. But all month we discuss it in our Discord server. So if you have thoughts to share about the book we're reading, you can tell me your thoughts, and then I can bring those thoughts to the live stream. Or you can just give me your thoughts in the chat. While I am describing the book, I will not be able to really keep up with the chat. So if I don't answer your question, ask it again later when I prompt you to do so. Cheers to vampires. I guess water counts as a drink. Your vampire ancestors would be disappointed, but you know, we can't please them all the time. Yes, I'm wearing black lipstick tonight. I figured I'd go there, you know? I don't do it often. Usually I'm all about the red, but this bat necklace was given to me by Dacre Stoker, the descendant of Bram Stoker, who has come on my show to do some promotions for some projects he's working on. As a thank you for promoting his work, he gave me this lovely bat necklace. And these bat earrings were given to me by one of you, along with this month's book club read. These lovely hardback volumes of books were given to me by one of you who sent them to my P.O. box, which is how I acquire most of my vampire books now. If there is a vampire book you think that I should read, or you would like the book club to read, or you just think needs more attention, you can send it to my P.O. box and I will talk about it on my show. And these 3 volumes of this book were sent to me by one of you. Thank you. I don't name names because I never know if people like to stay anonymous, but they are hardback. They've got this lovely soft cover, very fancy edition. They include little interviews and bonus art with the author in the back, which is really neat. A good edition. This Jojo's Bizarre Adventure by Hirohiko Araki was originally published serialized in a magazine. So when it was collected into volumes to be published, back when it was made, back in the 80s, it did it one way. And then these new editions were just released. These 3 books, which we have here, include the first 5 volumes. I'm not sure what 5 volumes means because there's more than 5 titles in it, but the 5 volumes of part 1 of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, which is called Phantom Blood, as you see there on the title, very shiny title. Yes, I love books that are beautiful. I know we're supposed to read books for the content within, but books with beautiful covers and beautiful printing editions and stuff, I'm just call me a bibliophile if you want. I just love them. And maybe that's shallow of me, but I love my precious treasures. As you can see behind me, this is about half of my vampire library. The top shelf, no, camera, don't track me. Well, whatever. Top shelf is all Anne Rice. I've read all those books. Second shelf is other books that I've read. Third shelf is books that I have not read. Fourth shelf is young adult. This side I have read, this side I have not. No, this side is series I have read. This side is standalones. And then bottom shelf is pulpy or mass market paperbacks. organized by read and not read. And the point of the Vampire Book Club is that we're going to read all these books together and then talk about them. So this month we are talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the manga from Japan, translated to English and released in a triple. What is up with my? I'm sorry, my camera has a mind of its own. Don't mind me. I hope it doesn't show you the messy side of my room. It only keeps over here on our like beautiful side of the room. So I don't read a lot of manga. It's not really something I'm that familiar with. I've read Hellsing, and a couple other things, but not really that much, and mostly only vampire manga. So I'm not that aware of like the things that you're just supposed to generally accept as manga that you're just supposed to take in stride. I'm a little bit aware, so I will take the things that seem like weird with a grain of salt. I have watched a few anime. I'm not that familiar with anime either. My favorite animes include, besides Hellsing, Yuri on Ice and Ancient Magus Bride. And beyond that, I've watched like Vampire Knight and Black Butler, and that's like the extent of my anime knowledge. But I did take Japanese in high school for 3 years, so I do have like some background in Japanese studies and Japanese culture. So the things that are like so Japanese that might seem odd to Westerners, I'm a little bit more familiar with. And last time when we were talking about the fact that we were going to discuss these books, I said that the style of just flipping through it, of what it seemed to me, reminded me of Dragon Ball Z. And I was told by you in the chat that that was a very apt comparison, which surprised me because I had never heard that comparison before. So if you're into the Dragon Ball Z style of Japanese art, literature, and cinema, perhaps JoJo would be something you would like. If you're into Yuri on Ice and Ancient Magus Bride like I am, it might not quite be your cup of tea. However, it does have vampires, and those vampires are interesting, and that's why we're here, because it's a vampire book club, and we're going to talk about the vampires. So, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a very long adventure. It's probably a lot more famous for the anime series, which I have not watched. Now that I've read Part 1 Phantom Blood, I can watch Season 1 of the anime, because I understand that the seasons follow the parts. I'm told that vampires factor into this Part 1, which we have read, but not Season 2, and then they come back again in Season 3, so I don't know if I would even want to, like it seems like a big commitment to watch all of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure just to get to the vampire parts. But as long as I have been doing vampire reviews and talking about vampires on the internet, people have asked me, what do you think about Dio Brando? What do you think about this vampire character that's so popular in culture? And, you know, I don't know. I don't know what I think about him because I was unfamiliar with him, but I knew he was popular. I knew people liked him. I knew people asked me about him all the time. So it's high time I found out. And someone was very generous to send me these gorgeous 3 volumes, which apparently cost them $20 each. So these are like $60 worth of books, a very generous gift to me. Thank you. And now I have read them. Now I've consumed them. So I'm going to tell you the story because that's how we always start. Oh, vampires are central to Part 1 and Part 2. And both Part 1s and Part 2 make up Season 1. Interesting. Good to know. Thank you for that. But Season 2 has ancestral vampires of kind of, but not so much. And then vampires, I understand, come back in Season 3 in a big way. So if you really want to get to the vampires, you have to like make it to Season 3. How many seasons are there of the actual anime? It's like 1 million, right? Isn't it really, really long? So the one thing that impressed me the most, which I was not expecting about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, is that it is set in Victorian Gothic London, which is like my favorite setting for all things. So this is like a Victorian Gothic gas lamp class, like, not comedy, but like comedy of manners sort of story, where you have like the high society and the lower classes. It's like Dickensian in a way, which I really appreciated. I always thought JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was going to be, I don't know, sci-fi or something futuristic. I was thinking Dragon Ball, right? Like I was thinking it'd be like aliens. I don't know. But no, it is Victorian gas lamp London with like noble lords and ragamuffin street urchins and like everything in between. And it is very much my area of interest. So I greatly appreciate that. And the story starts. Oh, part 6 is coming. Like, it's not even over yet. Aliens coming part 4. Okay, I gotta stop looking at the chat because we want to talk about the story, and I will come back to the chat later. I promise. So the story starts 12 years in the past, or 20 years in the past, depending on what you're doing the past from. And the story starts with a carriage accident, and this man finds this carriage accident, and he's like, an asshole. And he's like, I'm going to go into this carriage accident and steal everything I can. And he's got his girlfriend with him. And while he's trying to steal all the like stuff from the carriage accident, because it was a rich guy who got in this accident, he realizes that the dude is alive and that his baby is also alive, but his wife has died and all his servants have died. And so the dude is like, you saved my life. You came and you saved me from this carriage accident, and my wife died, but my infant son is still alive. And you, sir, I owe you my life, and I owe you a debt of gratitude. And the dude's like, I just stole your wallet, but okay, sure, I'm an opportunist. I'll take that. And so now we're up to 12 years later, and this dude has a 12-year-old son. So you know that this dude's son is roughly the same age as that baby that was in the carriage accident. So that baby will come back into play later. So this dude's son is very grumpy, and this dude is dying, and he's talking to his son. He says, when I die, my son, you must go to this rich guy who thought I rescued his life in a carriage accident, and he'll take care of you because he made me like a life debt back in the day. And the son is like, I don't give a shit. I hate you. You're a horrible father, and I'm a very grumpy son. So then the father dies, and the son, whose name is Dio Brando, this guy, not this guy. He says, at the tender age of 12, I will go find this rich guy and live with him, but I hate society, and the rich are leeches upon society, and death to the 1%, eat the rich. I'm going to take down high society from within. I'm going to pretend to be like a good, loyal ward to this rich man, and I'm going to like, destroy capitalism, as it were, or like feudalism, like whatever exists back in Victorian London. That's making the rich get rich because he's a very poor waif. Yeah, he has very good manners for some reason. Like and he's also very good looking. So he's able to do it. So he goes to this rich guy's house. I wish I could show you the pictures as I talk, but I think that would be too distracting if I tried to do that. So he's 12 years old. And let me show you something about the 12-year-olds in this book. Like the 12-year-olds look 22. Okay, let me find this real quick. This is amusing. Okay, so that's a 12-year-old. Look at the muscles on the 12-year-olds. These 12-year-olds are ripped. Okay, so everyone in this universe is ripped, which the author said that he did because it was the style at the time in the 80s. Everyone was into like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, and that was like the media you wanted your like men ripped. So these 12-year-olds have like bulging biceps the size of footballs. So this 12-year-old Dio goes to this rich guy's house, and he meets his son, who was the baby in the carriage, who happens to be his same age. And this son is named Jonathan Joestar, Jojo for short. I love that his name is Jonathan. That's an excellent vampire reference. So Dio meets Jonathan, and he's like, you will be my mortal nemesis because you are this privileged white boy who is like raised by the 1% to just like have everything you want, and I'm going to take down the class system. And I like, at this point, I'm rooting for Dio, and I'm like, yeah, eat the rich, debt to the 1%, make the world a better place. And, he's 12. Of course, he's not like nuanced about it. He's got like a 12-year-old mindset about it, but I support this. Jojo, meanwhile, is he sees some bullies beating up this girl, and he's like, I'm going to stop these bullies because I want to be a hero and I want to be noble, and I'm going to like do it. And then they kick his ass, and he's like, I suck at this. And this is what Jojo wants. Jojo is like, I want to be a hero. I want to be noble. But meanwhile, he's a very spoiled little brat, and he doesn't know what it takes to be a hero. which I find interesting. That's like good character development, because if he was like perfect from the start, that would be boring, right? He sucks at being a hero, even though he wants to be a hero. Um, and when Dio joins the family, Dio tells him from the start, like, we're going to be nemesis. And Jojo's like, friends? And Dio's like, no. And Jojo's like, maybe I'll wear you down. But he doesn't. So Dio's like the perfect little child. He eats his dinner very neatly, whereas Jojo's like a complete slob. He slurps his dinner, and his father's like, can't you be more like Dio? Look how well-mannered he is. And Jonathan's just like, maybe I am a slob. So Dio starts making it his life's mission to make this spoiled little rich boy's life a living hell. And he does a pretty good job about it. He's like better than Jonathan at everything. They're boxing matchers at, I don't know, boxers at the age of 12. They do a boxing match. Dio like molests Jonathan's girlfriend, and he kisses her, and he's like, I am the first person you kissed, not Jonathan. And she's just like, my honor is ruined. There's a lot of very like Victorian senses of honor in this, which seem very extreme and overdramatic, even for Victorian England. And I get the feeling that there's a lot of sort of like old-fashioned Japanese sensibilities put onto this, which is an interesting contrast to see those old-fashioned Japanese sensibilities put onto these like British supposed characters. And they're British because he draws them with like flags all over their costume all the time. You get the British flags all over. So everything sort of climaxes when Jonathan actually beats Dio at something, and Dio's just like, no, you cannot beat me. I'm going to do the worst possible thing I could do. I will kill his beloved dog. So he kills his beloved dog in a horrifyingly gruesome way. This is a horror manga, by the way. It is very gruesome, very bloody, very gory. Dogs die, babies die. Do not expect any punches to be pulled. So flash forward 7 years later. So these kids who were 12 are now 19, 20. Over the 7 years, somehow Dio has convinced Jonathan that they're friends. And he has gaslit Jonathan through these whole 7 years of thinking, everything I did when we were 12, you're not remembering right. I didn't really kill your dog. I didn't really molest your girlfriend. I didn't really destroy your life. Everything is, we're friends. And Jonathan's like, yeah, we're friends because I'm a hero and I'm not going to question that. But meanwhile, Dio is trying to kill Jonathan's father, who's, dad age, even though he is also ripped because Jonathan had to get it from somewhere. So Jonathan, Jojo, is now 6'4", 230 pounds, built like a tank. He's got legs like tree trunks, so he says. He's just like ripped. He must work out every day. I don't know, maybe he's on steroids. He's rich, he can afford it. Dio is also very ripped and very large, but not quite as large as Jojo. We are led to believe that Jojo is exceptionally large. And Dio's trying to kill the father because he thinks if he can kill the father, he can take over the estate, and then he'll have like defeated the class system. And he doesn't really have a goal beyond that, more than just like, I'm going to destroy this one rich dude, and that will be my contribution toward eating the rich and down with capitalism. I don't know. It's not that bad of an idea for someone who has come from such a tragic past. Like, yeah, his methods are really terrible. He's like killing dogs, but his ultimate goal, I'm still like, I'm on board for this. You want to make the world a better place. You want to like make society more egalitarian. Like, you're a jerk about it, but maybe you'll grow. So, Jojo kind of catches wise that Dio is poisoning his father, and that's why he's getting sick, because Jojo finds an old letter that says that Dio's father died the same way, and he's like, could it be poison? Meanwhile, what I haven't told you yet is that the prologue of this story told us about a mask, and this is an ancient Aztec mask that the ancient Aztecs used for like blood sacrifice rituals, and what this mask did was basically turn people into vampires. But nobody knows that, and this mask is now in possession of Jojo's father. Hangs on their wall. It's like art in their house. But Jojo has since become an archaeologist, because that's what you do when you're like super dedicated to working out in sports all the time. You also become an archaeologist. he has time for it all because he's rich and spoiled. And he's been studying this mask, but he hasn't figured it out. But Dio figures it out because blood accidentally gets on the mask and he sees it activate, and he's just like, maybe I could use that to kill someone or hurt someone because I am so evil. And Jojo suspects he's poisoning, so he's like, I'm going to take this medicine you're giving to father and I'm going to go into like the slums and find out if it's really medicine or if it's poison. And he does. So he goes to the slums, and everyone's like, that's the worst part of London. You're going to get your ass kicked. If you go into there, you're going to die. And he's like, no, I have a noble heart. It is worth it. Nothing is more important than my father's life. I would be willing to die to save my father. It's that important. And he goes in there and he gets attacked by ruffians, and he gets really hurt. Like, they like slice his arm to the bone. He like gets his eye gouged. And yet he still is like, my father, my honor, I must protect my father. This is so important to me. That the ruffians are like, wow, this guy has so much honor. He's so legit. I want to be him now. I will help him. So the main ruffian, his name is Speedwagon. He's got a hat that has like blades that go like pew, 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 pew. It's cool. He decides to become Jojo's friend, and he helps Jojo find the Eastern medicinal man, who's basically like he, is Japanese. So I don't know if he's supposed to be Japanese or Chinese, but he's Eastern. He's like the only Asian character in the whole book. So they find him and they bring him back, and he's like, "Yes, I did sell Dio poison," and he's very craven and cowardly. And they get back to the manor and they reveal that Dio was poisoning the father, and the cops are all there, and Dio's like, meanwhile, Dio's decided he wants to test the mask. So this was going on at the same time before the cops show up. He goes out and he wants to test the mask and see what it's going to do, because he's like, maybe I can use this to kill Jojo, maybe I can use it to kill the father. And he gets attacked by ruffians too. So he uses the mask on the ruffian, and the mask turns the ruffian into a vampire. And Dio's like, whoa. And then the vampire gets burned up by the sun, which saves Dio in the nick of time. And he's just like, oh, I will put this mask on Jojo, and then I'll put him in the sun, and that's how I'll like defeat the class system. And so they come back home. They're like, the jig is up, Dio. You're poisoning the father. We're going to arrest you. And then he's trying to use a mask, but then he can't. So he puts the mask on himself. And then he becomes a vampire, but it's nighttime, so he doesn't burn up in the sun. And now he has all these like awesome powers. First they think he's dead, but then he's not. And then he kills all the cops. And then he's about to try to go for Jojo. And then Jojo's father jumps in front of him and he gets stabbed in the back with the knife. And they're just like, no, dad is dying. So everyone is dead. All the cops are dead. The only people left are Jojo, Dio, and Speedwagon, who is the most useless character in the history of characters ever. Like, he was supposed to be this really super tough guy ruffian from the streets of London, like the worst slum in London. All he does for the entire rest of the books is watch and kind of narrate for us. He's an audience perspective character. And he was shown as being really like badass and a good fighter, but he does literally zero for the rest of the books except watch and give us like peanut gallery commentary. He's still a cute character. He's fun. He's got fabulous hair and a good hat. So Jojo and Dio fight. They set the mansion on fire. He's like, I can burn him. And, they're fighting in the fire, and the entire mansion is going up in smoke, and everything that Jojo ever cared about. But it doesn't matter because his father's died, and honor, and fight almost to the death. And he gets it to the point where he thinks he's killed Dio because he impales him on the statue, and then Jojo escapes and the entire house burns down, and you think Dio burns down with the house because Dio, as a vampire's injuries heal like immediately, but because he's impaled on the stake, the fire will have time to burn him before his injuries healed, and you're like, yes, he's dead. Jojo escapes out of the fire. That's the end of book 1 of 3 of 5 volumes, which equal Phantom Blood. And in book 1, you got 11 chapters. So, as you can see, book 1 is a little bit shorter than the other books. So the book 1 ends with, you think Dio is dead, died in the fire. You think Jojo escaped. So Jojo is very injured. He gets taken to the hospital. He's got like broken arms and broken legs. Dio really, really messed him up. And his buddy Speedwagon, who is useless but is a good observer and fills the audience in, goes to check on him in the hospital. And he wants to check on him, but he can't. There's this nurse there, and she's like not letting him in. And he's like, who is this lady? Who does she think is it? Turns out it's Jojo's girlfriend from 12 years ago. She's back. She like moved away for a while, and now she's back. And she still loves Jojo, even though Dio violated her that one time. She still loves Jojo, and she wants to be with him. And she's nursing him back to health. And Speedwagon's like, oh, I ship it. So then one day, you also find out that the Asian character, the Eastern medicine man, went to the burnt out husk of the mansion and found the mask, and also found Dio, who is not dead. He escaped, he survives, and he takes him away. So, he's looming in the background. So then Jojo is healing. He's like an invalid. And he's walking down the street, and he runs into this guy, Zeppeli, who is an Italian, like kind of snake oil salesman, but not real. Like he has that vibe, but he's like half snake oil salesman, half ringmaster, half Italian trapeze artist. And this guy punches Jojo in the sternum as a show of like competence, and Jojo's like, ugh. But then he realizes all his pain is gone and all of his broken bones are immediately healed, and he's like, how did you do that? And I used breathing techniques. So this guy is the master of the Hamon breathing techniques, of form of fighting. It's like a martial art, and he uses air and the air in your blood to do like nearly supernatural super fighting. He can like move faster and further than normies, and it's just like he uses ripples in the waves. So so he's met as Mr. Miyagi, and Jojo then starts training with this guy. He trains with him for 1 week, and this guy is trained for like 20 years, right? Like he's a super master, even though he's not the ultimate master. We find out later that he went off to India and trained like in the Indian temples with actual Indian characters. Even though he's an Italian character, he learned this like Eastern magic. And he teaches Jojo, and we find out that Jojo is extremely adept at this form of fighting because he has a tragic past. And his tragic past gives him the power to hone in on this and like be really, really good at it really, really fast. And this martial art makes him able to heal himself. It kind of puts him on the level with the vampire without losing any of his humanity. And we find out the reason this is because the way the mask work is it turns you into a vampire, and then you have to suck the life force out of people. They don't do it by like biting their neck and drinking their blood, though they do drink blood, but they can just like touch someone and suck their life force out of them with their hands. But this power gives life back. So it's like the yin and the yang, like the opposite. So this power will be enough to counteract the vampire power, and they're very well balanced. It's not easy to miss that the name is a Led Zeppelin reference, because the author tells us in his interview in the back of the book, Zeppelini. So Jojo learns this technique. It's the perfect antidote to vampires. He learns how to fight the vampire, and Zeppelini is like the super master. He's the Yoda. And then they're like, okay, we're going to go find where Dio went hunt him down, kill him. That's our plan. They figure out where he went. So it's Zeppelini, Speedwagon, who's just along for the ride, and Jojo off on this mission. Jojo says goodbye to his girlfriend. He's like, I love you. Wait for me. Stay here and be safe. And she's like, no, Jojo, I love you. She has gorgeous dresses. Like the art on her Victorian fashion is very gorgeous. I love it. I love any Victorian fashion art. And they go off to this town that is an old English like hidden city where the rulers, the queens of like Tudor era would send their knights to go be trained, and they would go through this like gauntlet training, and these knights would be like super awesome because they defeated this training. And they go there and they're in a carriage, and it's very like Victorian, very Dracula. It's gorgeous. And they're going through this tunnel that will lead them like through the mountain into where the secret hidden city is. And meanwhile, we know that Dio has been rescued by the Asian medicine man who he has turned into a vampire. Though anyone that isn't Dio who gets turned into a vampire is technically a zombie. They call them zombies, even though they still have fangs like vampires. So he can raise the dead, he can raise zombies. It's very similar to Helsing. And he has this sidekick with this medicine man. And they go out, and he's going through the streets of London, and we find out that Jack the Ripper is happening, and Jack the Ripper is going on. So Dio recruits Jack the Ripper and turns him into a zombie. And he's like, you will be my henchman. So, well, Jojo and his crew are going through this tunnel. The Jack the Ripper, who's been recruited, like jumps out, and then they have a big old Dragon Ball fight. And he's using his Hammond technique, and Zeppelini is using his technique, and he's drinking this glass of wine while he's doing, and the whole time he's doing, he's like, I will not spill a single drop of this glass of wine. And he doesn't, and he's that badass. But Jack the Ripper, what he does is he like embeds scalpels in his body, and then he shoots them out because he likes slicing things with scalpels, and he's just like projectile scalpels all over the place. And he escapes through a tunnel. So Zeppelini's like, okay, Jojo, this is your test. If you can't beat Jack the Ripper, then you don't stand a chance against Dio. So take this glass of wine, and if you spill a drop while you're defeating Jack the Ripper, then that's it. I'm done with you. We're done. So Jojo goes in, and he has to do a whole fight with Jack the Ripper without spilling the glass of wine. Then he realizes that the glass of wine is his secret weapon, and he can use the breathing techniques to, do things with it. So he defeats Jack the Ripper, who has this like rib cage knife like clamp thing. He's like a big claw. It's very graphic, very creative. Then he defeats Jack the Ripper. They get on, they go through, they get to the city. And while they're in the city, they're like, okay, we have to get from here to there. How are we going to do it? And while they're doing it, this kid steals their bag. And this kid is like hypnotized. So they realize that this hypnotized kid stole their bag for the sake of drawing them in distraction, and then Dio shows up. And he's like, well, now we're going to fight, but I'm not going to fight you because that's beneath me. So you fight my zombies instead. And then the kid is like along for the ride. So now they have a kid sidekick, which, you can't really have a Victorian gas lamp story without like a scrappy ragamuffin kid. So, well, in the fight with the city, it was a training ground for the knights. So he brings up a bunch of zombies, former knights. But there's two in particular, two really big, important knights that we find out were the vanguard of Queen Mary, like Bloody Mary, Queen Mary, in the whole like fight against Elizabeth, and then, the whole big war that happened. I forget which English war that was. And these two knights were like the badassest of the badasses. Their names, I'm not going to tell you their names, but one of them is really big and strong, and the other one is kind of sexy. So we got these two knights, and they come up as zombies, and he's like, you're going to fight these two knights. Like, I don't even have to be around for this. I, Dio, will go off and do other things while these two knights fight you. And I love when Dio talks, because every time he talks, he just says, I, Dio, or you will not fight me, Dio. Just in case you're not sure who I was that I was talking about, I have to remind you that my name is Dio, which is just it means God. So he's just like calling himself God all the time. Has a bit of a complex. So now Jojo has to fight these two knights, and we the big tank one sort of like goes over to where Zepparelli and Speedwagon are and makes it so they can't do anything and they're just kind of standing there. So first Dio's going to fight the sexy knight, and the sexy knight has a secret power which is projectile hair. So think like not Frozen, Tangled, the Disney movie with Rapunzel with her hair that could like whip things. So he has projectile hair, which he calls Danse Macabre hair, which I love. I love anything with Danse Macabre in it. And so the Danse Macabre hair can like, grow and become like an octopus and just sort of like has a mind of its own. It can get as big as he wants and can do whatever he wants. And, it's very hard to defeat. But, Jojo does it. There's a plot point with like things getting frozen and then needing heat. Like if his blood gets frozen, he can't fight. And like Zepparelli tries to do things and he gets like his arm gets frozen. So he can't like breathe through the blood to do things. And they have to warm it back up somehow. And, but this knight honor is very important to him. So like chivalry. And because Jojo ends up defeating him and his projectile sentient hair, this knight dies with honor, and he's just like, I have been bested by the best, and you are the most honorable thing to be beaten by. But the other knight, he's just like, screw this, I don't care. I'm a tank. I'm just gonna like squash you. He's Hulk smash. So they're running away and they're trying to get away from this tank, and they realize there's a bunch of leaves around them. They're like, let's like use the breathing techniques to turn these leaves into a giant hang glider. So they do, and they're flying away on this giant hang glider, and they got the kid and Speedwagon along with them. And they go to one of these towers that was like the training grounds for the knights, and they get into this tower. And inside this tower, there's like a war room, which has this chain that goes through the ceiling. So there's like a hole in the ceiling, and the chain like comes out this way and it comes out this way. And what happens is like the chain has a mind of its own, and it puts its manacle around your neck. And so if you're on one end of the chain and the other person's on the other chain, you're like tugging on each other. So then the big guy comes in and he puts the chain around his neck, and then they have the whole like two-headed chain neck battle. And it's really hard, and Jojo's like feeling because he's already weakened from his fight with the hair guy. And Zepparelli and Speedwagon and the kid, whose name is like Paco, are outside, and they're like, what do we do? The only way we can help him is if we get this door open, but the lever's on the inside. So finally the kid, who's been like a coward all his life, summons the courage and like, I'm not going to be a coward anymore. I'm going to stand up because my sister believed in me. And he crawls through like the tiny space that no one else can get through, and he gets in, and then like he gets squished by the tank guy, but he gets the door open just in time, and then Zepparelli gets through, and then Zepparelli gets in, and he's just like, now that I'm here with my breathing techniques, I can attack. But then we find out that there was a prophecy, and the prophecy was given to Zepparelli by his own Mr. Miyagi, his own Yoda back in India, like the Indian guy who trained him in the temple. And it said like, the day you will die is the day that the gate is opened by a child and you help the young one defeat the something something. And he's just like, oh no, this is the day I will die. So he does help Jojo defeat the big knight, but he does die, and like the guy rips him in half, so he's like just torso now, like his legs and crotch are gone, so he's just like stomach up. So he reaches out as just this half thing, and he reaches out and he touches Jojo, and he's like, Jojo, I'm going to transfer all my life force into you, and by doing that, it was like all the like superpowers that I have will now become your superpowers, and I'll make you more superpowered. And so he does that, and it gives Jojo the power to defeat the big knight. But meanwhile, Zepparelli's still not dead, because he still gets like a death scene afterwards, which is great. So after he defeats the big guy, Zepparelli has this very sad death scene, and he's like, it was prophesized, it was meant to be. And Zepparelli's whole life mission has been to find the mask, to use his breathing techniques that are the opposite of the mask powers to defeat the mask, because the mask killed his father back in the day. By the way, his tragic backstory, his father got a hold of the mask while they were on a ship one time, and his father went, berserk with the mask and killed everyone on the ship except for his son, and his son got away. And his life's mission has been to stop the powers of the mask, and that's why he's along for this ride. But he's like, if I give my life force to Jojo, now Jojo can do it. So Jojo's like, the power is mine. So at this point, I'm like, Jojo isn't even a character anymore. He's just a concept. Jojo is just a fighting machine concept. And I'm really disappointed because Jojo was such an interesting character back when he was young and messing up all the time. It's just like, I want to be a hero, but I kind of suck at it because, I've got this baggage of being raised as a child of the 1%. And that's not my fault because I was born into generational wealth. But how do I combat that and see beyond my rich boy goggles? And Dio also has been very much simplified. He started off with this character who was like, my life sucked. I was a gutter rat. I had this horrible alcoholic father who was awful to me, and I get sent off to live with nobility, and I can take down the system of nobility from within, and that's my mission. And I'm gonna make the world less noble, not better, because he's awful, but he's still gonna take out something that's ostensibly bad. But now Dio's just with the power of being a vampire, I could just rule the world. And it's his goals have become so much more simple. Both their goals have become so much more simple. And at this point, I'm very disappointed because it started off as commentary on society. And I was like, yeah, this is deep. The vampires are the anti-establishment. But now they're not. Now the vampires are just power-hungry monsters. The author says in his notes that what interested him about Dio as a bad guy, as this force of evil, was his power of control. So as a force of evil, he can control the zombies, essentially. He can turn any other person into something like him to do his bidding, to do whatever he wants, and to fight his battles. And, he's got this control over people. Which, as a vampire metaphor, yeah, that's apt. But what Dio started at is kind of the opposite of that because he was trying to destroy something that was bad, which even though he was an asshole about it, like killing dogs and molesting girls, his goal was still something that would make the world better, even though that wasn't why he wanted it. But now he just wants to rule the world, which is where did this come from? I guess the mask made him that much more evil. Yeah. People talk about this story and they say that it's very black and white. Jojo's just cliche good and Dio's just cliche bad, but they didn't start that way. If you read the beginning of the book, it doesn't start cliche black and white at all. It just becomes that once they start throwing punches and using breathing techniques. Yeah, he wants power. Dio wants power. But that's not bad. If you are a disenfranchised person living in poverty, of course you're going to want power. Why wouldn't you? You want, you see rich people having all the power and you're like, I want some of that. And why shouldn't I have that? Why shouldn't disenfranchised people have some of the power that rich people have? It's fine. I'm not saying he wanted it for good reasons, but I'm still saying he wasn't wrong. Anyway, so after Jojo defeats the knight and Zepparelli dies, and they have this very tragic death scene. Happens in one night. So then they go back to the town where the kid lived. And the kid is like, my sister, who thought I could be a better person, have to make sure she's okay. Dio said he was going to turn the entire town into zombies in one night. We have to go see if he did that. So they go back to town and they're like, so are they zombies yet? Or did Dio not get to it yet? And they meet a guy on their way there. And the guy's like, I'm acting perfectly normal. Everything's fine. And they're like, whew, Dio didn't do it. And the guy's like, check, hey, I'm a zombie. And he attacks and they're like, no, see, Dio's taken over the whole town. And Dio has, and he's got his Dracula castle on high. And he's got all these townsfolk. And he's just being evil to all of them. And you see him with this woman who has a baby. And she's like, please just spare my baby. Promise you will not hurt my baby. I'll give you my life. I'll do whatever you want if you don't hurt my baby. And Dio's like, deal. I will not touch your baby. I will not hurt your baby if you become a vampire and like become like me, one of my zombies. So like he does this thing and he possesses her. And then she eats her own baby. And he's like, I told you I wouldn't hurt my baby. You did it yourself. See, you could have kept your baby if you let me turn your baby into a zombie, but no. So you ate your baby. That's how evil he is. Meanwhile, he's doing all this in a very romantic way. He has this aesthetic. He's like surrounded by roses, right? And he's talking in this very like genteel way. He's very suave. He's, you know, this classic like suave, romanticized, sexy, villainous character who's just like smarmy, you know, like there's roses everywhere. It's very flowery. It's an aesthetic. So Jojo and the kid are trying to like find the kid's sister and see where the townspeople are. And then like these other people show up. These other people are the guy from India who trained Zepparelli back in the day, his old like Mr. Miyagi character, and two of his other pupils. They show up and they're like, "We're here. We're your backup. We're here because Zepparelli emailed us, or no, sent us a letter and said, come help. We're too late to save him. That makes us sad. But now we have like a mission. So now Jojo's got backup. And these characters get zero development whatsoever. But one of them can do the splits, and it's really cool because his legs are just like, that's his trick. So they go into Dio's castle. It's the castle, wherever Dio is, where he's like abusing women and stuff and making them eat their babies. And he's like grafted his zombies' heads onto dogs, and he's got all these like human-headed dogs just like hanging out with him. It's super creepy. So they get there, and he's got this like zombie that also has snakes coming out of its head that's attacking. And they fight the snake-headed zombie, and the snakes are poisonous, and they're like biting Jojo. And then he uses his breathing techniques to turn the snakes around and make them bite the guy himself, because you know Jojo's basically a god now because he has Zepparelli's power within him. So big final boss battle. Zombies are coming, so like the other squad is dealing with the zombies. Speedwagon is still being entirely useless this entire time. The kid gets his sister. The sister was there, and she was like this close to getting taken, but they saved the sister. And Jojo and Dio finally face off, and Speedwagon, our loyal narrator, is like, they're just so powerful that we knew that as soon as they faced off, it would be over immediately. So what Jojo does immediately is like karate chops down Dio's head and like splits Dio in half. And you're like, oh, well, he's dead. No, he's not. He's still perfectly like coherent and talking while he's split in half, like down to his sternum. Meanwhile, he keeps freezing Jojo. And every time he freezes Jojo can't use his like breathing techniques. And Jojo's like, I can't shoot my shooties at him because I'm frozen. So Jojo sets his like glove on fire. And because his glove is on fire, he like punches through Dio enough with the fire glove because he can't get frozen. Oh yeah, he's got a sword, right? So when the sexy hair knight with the projectile hair died, he was like, I have been killed by someone with so much honor that I will give you my sword. And his sword had the word luck in English on it, but he wrote a P on it with his blood. So it's like, now it has pluck. And now you'll be plucky, Jojo. So he uses his like plucky sword to defeat Dio. And then he punches him through with fire, and then Dio like falls off the cliff, and Dio is like, so one of the breathing techniques is like the sunlight blast, and if you do sunlight on a vampire, they die, right? So he's like starting to disintegrate, and he's just like, no. So what Dio does is he chops off his own head with his like fist somehow, and he's like, my body's disintegrating with the sunlight, but if I can save my head, so he becomes like a head, like a Futurama head in a jar. So Dio's head lives on. And the Asian medicine man is still around, and he gets the head and he takes it off somewhere safe. And you're just like, oh, Dio is not defeated yet. But meanwhile, Jojo thinks he is, right? So Jojo thinks he saved the day. He thinks Dio is dead. He finds Dio's like disintegrated body and his armor, and he's just like, he poofed into smoke, so he must be dead. And Jojo goes back home, and he like recovers himself, and he's got his like sidekicks now, and now he's getting married, and he's going to marry his childhood girlfriend. So they're going to get married, and they're going to go on a honeymoon to America. And when you live in England and you want to go on a honeymoon in America in 1889, you got to take a boat. So they get on this boat and they're going to go to America. And meanwhile, we see these like pallbearers bring this giant like sarcophagus onto the boat. And they're like, what is this mysterious sarcophagus that's coming onto the boat? So on the boat, Jojo is having this fabulous honeymoon with his new wife. And we find out that the Asian medicine man is on the boat, and he's the one in charge of the sarcophagus, which contains Dio's head, because of course it does. And what Dio has decided he wants, because he can still like talk completely coherently, being just a head, is that because he was defeated by Jojo, that means he respects Jojo greatly. Like Jojo is the most respected, most honorable nemesis he's ever had. And he needs a new body, right? Like he lost his body. So he's like, I will cut off Jojo's head and take his body, which we have been told is like ginormous and sexy and built like a tank. He is 6'5" almost. He's like 6'4 3/4 and 230 pounds with like muscles on top of his muscles. So Dio wants his body. So what he wants his Asian medicine man to do is to get Jojo down to the hold where he can like put his own head onto Jojo's body. So, things happen. He arranges it, and Jojo gets down there, and Dio, who we have known can shoot his life essence fluids out of himself projectilely, because he did it before, shoots his life essence projectile self through his eyes, because, he's just a head in a jar now, like, seriously, Futurama. And he's trying to shoot Jojo into the brain to just like kill him immediately, because he wants to give Jojo an honorable, fast, easy, painless death, because he respects Jojo now. But Jojo like jerks, so he gets shot through the neck. So he's like bleeding out through his neck wounds. And then his girlfriend comes down. No, his wife. His wife comes down. She's like, no, don't die. And he's like, I told you to stay away. And the Asian medicine man zombie starts attacking, but Jojo stops him and he cuts off his head, and then he starts controlling the body. And so he has the body of this character grab onto the engine parts of the ship to make the steam engine stop, because apparently it's a steamship. And if he does that, there'll be enough pressure that the ship will explode. And Dio's like, no, I must have your body. All I have to do is get your body and to get into my like super sarcophagus, which can withstand explosions, because I planned for this eventuality. But they fight, and it doesn't happen. And there's like, he's turned everyone else on the ship into zombies, and they're fighting and stuff, and it doesn't work. And his wife is like, I will die with you, Jojo. My honor is only to die with you. That's all I care about, because a man is the end all of my being. But meanwhile, there's another lady with a baby, who the lady died, but the baby lived, and Jojo's like, no, you must take that baby, and you must escape from here with that baby, because I was a baby when my father got into a carriage accident and I survived, so you must take that baby and survive. And Dio is also like, I too was a baby that survived, and this baby's very important. And the wife is just like, oh no, if I must, I just wanted to die with you, because being a woman with a husband, that's all I care about. And Jojo's like, no, you must live for that random baby over there. So she takes the baby, and then Dio is like Dio is just a head, right? But he can also use projectile hair, so his hair is like climbing around like an octopus. And he can also shoot his like tendons down from his neck, so his neck tendons are like coming around Jojo, and he's like, if I can just graft my head onto Jojo's body, I'll survive and get into the sarcophagus. But no, then the ship explodes before it can happen, And no, before the ship explodes, Jojo dies of blood loss. And his wife is very sad. And she's like, no, Jojo, you're dead. You've died of blood loss. And he's just like, take the baby. So she gets into the coffin with the baby, which can withstand explosions. And then the ship explodes. And so Dio's head and dead Jojo's body, who we are told is literally dead, Jojo has died of blood loss, explode in the ship. The wife and the baby, and the wife tells us she's pregnant. The wife is pregnant. Escape in the coffin, and they float away, and they get rescued by another ship 2 days later. And we are told that Jojo has died, but by dying, he has eliminated Dio, the head of Dio, and also eliminated the evil that the mask could produce, because they smashed the mask a while back, but, you know, Dio was still like the embodiment of the mask. But now that Dio and Jojo are both dead, there can be peace in the world, and there will never be any more bizarre adventures ever. And everyone will live happily ever after. And that baby got adopted by the pregnant lady who also has Jojo's baby in her tummy. I know there's like 6 more seasons of this, so I know there's many more bizarre adventures to come. So I'm guessing, like, I know Dio comes back. I know he comes back. I've been spoiled for that. I'm guessing Jojo comes back too, since he is the title character. But the books end telling us Jojo is freaking dead, which I was not expecting. Yeah. It's just like, no, ship explodes. Jojo is dead. And then it's just like mourning of all the dead. And this lady escapes with a baby floating in the ocean. The end. So my prediction, my guess is that this lady who's pregnant is going to give birth to someone who will be Jojo reincarnated, because the baby that she like adopted can't be Jojo reincarnated, right? Because that baby was already born. But I'm guessing she's pregnant with Jojo, who's going to be reincarnated. That's my prediction. My random guess, even though, you know, I have no basis for this. That's story. So everyone in the chat, like, I couldn't really read the chat while I was talking because I was trying to look at the camera, so I'm not like looking down here, but I'm looking up here. Sorry, I have to ban a troll. So people in the chat are just like, Dio is awful. Dio is an asshole. He's just like the embodiment of evil. He has no nuance and no like depth whatsoever. I think young Dio did. I think after he became a vampire, he lost that. And maybe this is one of those universes where vampires are like, you lose your soul and you just become evil, because he didn't start wanting to like take over the world and be like, instead of just dismantling the class system, I want to rule the class system, until he became a vampire. So if the vampire in this is the loss of youthful ideals, yeah. And I liked Dio better when he was a 12-year-old who was an asshole killing dogs, because at least he was doing it for like complicated, like emotional reasons. Like, yeah, it's bad. It's awful. He's a horrible person. But he did it because he felt shame. He did it because he felt like insecure. And that's character complexity that like I'm down for. Like, give me, yeah, insecure villains, sure. Obviously I'm not saying they're good people, I'm just saying they're well written. And then as soon as he became a vampire and they started doing punches like pew, 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 it just lost all the nuance and just became about like fighting and muscles. All right, you guys have been talking a lot in the chat and I've not been able to keep up. So if you said anything you wanted me to see, now's your chance to say it again. And if I see it again, and if I have an answer for you, I will answer. If I don't have an answer for you, I will skip your question. Will I read part 2? If someone sends it to me the way they sent me these books so generously, and I know these books are not cheap, yes, of course I'll read them. I'm not going to not read books that people send me. I'm not going to seek it out on my own. I thought Phantom Blood had a very solid arc. I like that Jojo dies in the end because yes, this like kid who wanted to be a hero, of course you're going to die in the end. What do you think you're going to get if you want to be a hero to defeat the ultimate evil of this magical mask? Of course you're going to die. I like that his wife lived. It was hard enough watching the other women get so brutally murdered. I don't like women getting murdered in stories. It's a personal thing I don't like. I would like to watch a show. I've been sent season 1 of the show, so I'm interested in watching that now that I have received it. So that'll be interesting. I'm curious about season 3, which I've been told has more vampire action. But is it in-depth, nuanced vampire action, or is it just like fighty, punch vampire action? That's my question. Which of the 2 Japanese works that we've read for book club so far do I think is more accessible for non-Japanese audience? JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or Vampire Hunter D? I would say Vampire Hunter D, because JoJo's Bizarre Adventure had a lot of those, like, that's a manga thing quirks to it that if you don't have any familiarity with manga or anime by extension, you're going to just think it's just too, like, you don't get it. Very over dramatic, like everyone is screaming everything they say. This, like, it's just the way things done. It's an art style. And I think you definitely have to have some awareness or at least like an ability to be like open to that to be able to stomach JoJo's Bizarre Adventure without just finding it too cheesy. It's very cheesy, but it's supposed to be cheesy. That's the style. Like that's what you're in for. Vampire Hunter D felt much more accessible. I personally was kind of disappointed that the way Jonathan died was from blood loss. Like he gets shot with the laser eyeballs through his neck and dies of blood loss. Like he didn't even die fighting. If he really died, if that was really his death, if he's going to be reincarnated, as my prediction predicts, it's kind of just like a disappointing way to go. Three features vampires. They're not really plot heavy outside the return of Dio. So what parts are vampire heavy? Like, give me vampires that are interesting. If I watched the anime Blood Plus, I did a video about the thing it was based on. So maybe. No, the original animated, I wouldn't call it anime, but the animated product that show then was based on. So not the actual Blood Plus, but the rest of it. What did I think about the origin Aztec mask for the vampires? I thought that was interesting. I like that it incorporated some like Western historical, lore that wasn't England or America. Jonathan is sadly gone forever. His life was a tragedy. Oh, it's so gothic. I love it. It's sad because, I was rooting for Jojo, even though he was kind of like a boring, like he got really boring by the end. Jojo was just like a fighting machine with like no life ambition other than to like marry his wife and then like give up on her really quickly. But I am sad that he's gone forever. But it's tragic and it's gothic, and that's how like Victorian gothic vampire stories should end. So, I'm down. It's good. What did I think about vampires drinking blood with their hands instead of fangs? Well, they did drink blood with their mouths. What they did with their hands was steal life essence. But they also drank blood. But I like the stealing life essence with their hands. I thought that was an interesting twist. I would have been disappointed if they didn't also drink blood, but the way they drank blood was more just like the way like a human who likes to drink blood would drink blood. It wasn't their vampireness. I should watch or discuss the anime Castlevania, which is all about vampires. I have watched and discussed the first season of Castlevania, and I have not caught up on any of it since, which I mean to, but I was kind of hoping one of my Patreon patrons would request it for a review, and I was kind of waiting for that. Maybe they will. If not, I'll get around to it myself eventually, I'm sure. Do you know which part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure upset me the most from like a bloody, gory, this is upsetting to read and like scary and horrifying point of view? Was when he was fighting with Dio and Dio like grabs into his neck and pulls out his carotid artery, and he's just like, your artery is very nice. I could snap it if I wanted to. And he's just like holding Jonathan by the arteries, like holding someone by the balls, right? But no, he's his vampire equivalent of that, holding them by the artery. He's like dug into his neck, pulled out his artery, and he's just like holding it. It doesn't wind up doing anything with it, which, and I guess like the breathing techniques get the artery to go back in and heal perfectly, which I was just like, thank God, because that was the grossest, most horrifying, most disgusting part. And I'm almost like, I'm feeling a little sick reading this right now, which none of the blood and gore in this was getting to me at all until that part. That part was a bit much for me. I'm reading the chat, looking for questions. Which outfit would I most like to emulate if we did a traditional review of JoJo? I mean, his wife's outfits were great, but they were all like skirt, right? You never see me except from like the chest up, so you wouldn't see it anyway. And I like JoJo's like big old shoulder pads. He was always like naked underneath, so I couldn't do that. Did I like Speedwagon? He was okay at first, but after that, he just became like a random narrator. He didn't do anything, and he even says like towards the end, like, "I guess it's just like my place to just not do anything." I guess, but why? Why did this character even need to be here? I thought I kept waiting for Speedwagon to be like the secret weapon or something. Nope, nothing. And Castlevania isn't vampire anime; it's American media in the style of anime, but it's not anime. What brand is my lipstick? Smashbox. The liquid lip, the black one. Given to me as a Christmas gift, not this Christmas, but the previous Christmas, by Lindsay Ellis. She gave me all the Smashbox colors because that's what she uses in her videos, and that was her Christmas gift to me. Who is my favorite character and why? When they were young, it was Dio because he seemed the most interesting and most complex, but he got pretty boring. Like as soon as he turned into a vampire, like human Dio, surprise! Like me, the vampire person, likes a human character better. But as soon as he became a vampire, and he's just like, yes, all I care about is power, and I will have power and control everything. If you read the author interviews in the back, he's talking about how like he thinks the true nature of evil is to control things. And the fact that he can like raise zombies and control them is the embodiment of evil and all of that. I thought that was interesting. And as far as like, what do your vampires represent? What do they mean? Oh, controlling others. But I think that really ties back into the Victorian idea of the upper class nobility of having that power and controlling society. Like Dio becomes the thing he hates, which is the tragedy of the vampire. Like this isn't a sympathetic vampire at all. Like as a human, he's sympathetic, even though he's awful. But as a vampire, he's not because he becomes the very thing he hates. Ooh, part 2 has a great female character. That's interesting. Thank you. It annoyed me that the female characters in this were just like, all nobility, no weakness. I will die for the man that matters to me. All nobility, all honor. Have I seen the anime adaptation of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? No, I have not. but I have just received it. Someone sent me uh, it, so now I can watch it. I'm gonna have to wait to watch it because I'm about to go out of town, which is why we're having book club a day early. Is I am going away. I will be away from all Wi-Fi and cell signal and internet for about 10 days, going into the wilderness. I'm roughing it. Um, and going with Lindsay and our other Shea Apocalypse coworkers on a work retreat, and I'm just gonna be off the grid. So if you never hear from me again, I died out there. I'm a little bit nervous, but it's gonna be fun. We're going to the desert. Yeah, Jonathan is also no longer personnel. Like as soon as Jojo started doing his like breathing techniques and learning his like martial arts, he lost his personality too, and it just became all fights. Like their personality is honor. And like even Dio is just like, you defeated me, so I respect you. Honor. Like that's their only personality trait for any of them. The female characters get better as the manga goes on. That's interesting. I mean, considering that was written in the 80s, I'm not surprised that anything is the way it is. Like, I'm like, yes, this is very 1986 when it was written. I can see that. That's fine. I'm not going to judge it by modern standards by any means whatsoever. I'm taking it for what it is. Yeah. I mean, the thing about the art style is that it's very kind of messy. And it's probably something that you would have to read multiple times to really catch everything that's going on. Like, see, when their hands are blurry like this, that means they're moving fast and they're doing like techniques. You know, I'm the kind of person that wants to find out what's going on in the story. So I'll read manga fast, probably faster than I should, and focus more on the words and on the pictures, which is not the way you're supposed to read manga at all. How do I compare the art and character styles to Fist of the North Star? I've never read Fist of the North Star, so I do not know. The mansion fight? What did I think of the mansion? The mansion fight was very cool. I liked that everything was on fire. I like that he lost his entire mansion. I like that Jojo lost everything. I don't know that he lost his generational wealth, but if he did, that would be interesting because now, like, everything that made him a spoiled brat at the beginning, he now doesn't have the advantage of. So, like, someone who was raised to be the 1% is now no longer the 1%. How do you deal with that? That's interesting. But then he doesn't, he just becomes like a fighting machine. What did I think of part 3, given that it's the most popular one? Do you mean part 3 as in not part of? I've only read Phantom Blood, so I haven't read anything beyond this. Dio's backstory, with his father telling him to sell his dead mother's dress, was the only part that made Dio sympathetic, in my opinion. I feel there were a few moments like that. There were other moments as well where Dio was sympathetic. Like his dad was horrible to him. When you think about being raised by someone like that, of course you're going to be a jerk when you grow up. And maybe if Dio had met someone that was a positive influence in his life, he could have turned out to be okay. Like maybe they could have turned him around. But he didn't meet anyone who's a positive influence. He met spoiled rich people. He met the nobility. He met assholes who were like, I am rich and gaining my wealth off the suffering of others. So, of course, it's just going to make him more of an asshole. So, if the whole series is called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but JoJo is gone, JoJo is dead, JoJo as we know him, is this like still JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? JoJo was okay. You say he did meet nice people, Jojo offered friendship, but was Jojo really a nice person as a 12-year-old, or was he a spoiled little rich brat that Dio wasn't gonna take seriously? Like, you meet the son of a billionaire, like, you meet, like, Jeff Bezos's son. You're not gonna like, even if he's just like, "Let's be friends," you just be like, "No, bitch. I'm gonna take the system down. I'm gonna destroy Amazon." I could see where Dio was coming from as a very traumatized child. Like, yeah, Jonathan meant well, but I can see why Dio didn't take it well. He needed an adult influence that was positive, like a child's not gonna do the trick. Not that I'm a Dio apologist. I'm just saying I appreciate a complex, multifaceted character that has potential to have gone in multiple directions. Like, this character wasn't written as evil from birth, obviously. He has a tragic backstory, which is great. Love tragic backstories. Okay. So these are like different JoJo's that have bizarre adventures. So it's not the same JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it's other JoJo's that have bizarre adventure. I got you. Well, I'm sorry that JoJo is dead. I think he died in a very disappointing way. I would have liked him to die in a more epic way than just like getting shot with laser eyes through the neck. Because like he gets shot through the neck and he dies from like two puncture wounds in his neck, which is very vampire-y. But like he's gotten so many other injuries that he survived that I'm just like, okay, I guess this time he didn't survive. Gotcha. Lots of different JoJo's. I understand. Okay. Do you have any more thoughts or feelings or questions about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1 Phantom Blood? Now's your chance. I'm going to take a drink of my wine. Please talk in the chat until I catch up to you. What would I have done with Dio when he became instead? I guess instead of making him want to take over the world and become the new ruling class, I would have kept him wanting to destroy the existing ruling class because the existing ruling class in Victorian England was admittedly pretty bad, right? So if he wanted to keep dismantling the system, that would have been cool. Like maybe he would have gone after bigger fish than this one noble guy, the Joe Stars. But him wanting to become the new ruling system is him becoming the thing he hated in the first place. Which, sure, that's evil. Vampires are evil. Fine. It's perfectly valid. But if I wanted to make it more of that, like, sympathetic vampire type, that sympathetic trope of the vampire is the outcast and the outsider and the misunderstood, which is what I like, which isn't always, but since you're asking, that's probably what I would have done is have him, like, gone after bigger fish. Be like, I'm going to destroy the entire capitalist Victorian society. I will destroy colonialism while I'm at it. Dio Brando, social justice warrior. Phantom Blood didn't really have any story to it. It gets far more interesting in later chapters, and they're not just about fights. Oh, that is interesting. Though I think it being just about fights is what makes the Dragon Ball Z comparison, which is what people like. If he was more anti-hero, that would be really interesting. Sure it would. Like, heck yeah, it would. Did I mind the whole stone mask plotline? Not at all. Because, Aztec magical mythology masks, that's interesting. Like, Anne Rice has a whole Mesoamerican mask that has supernatural powers plotline in her books. Like, it's a thing with vampire books. Like, it is perfectly valid. Dio's name, according to the books, is just the Latin word for God. Latin, Italianate Latin. Like, it doesn't come from anything. The author was very upset that people thought he named Dio after a brand of scooter named Dio, which he's like, no, it's just the word for God. Just he named his character God. If you keep reading the story, you will understand that Dio had a much more noble and complex purpose related to JoJo's central theme, man against destiny. That is interesting. I would like to see that. Part one is basically an action packed take on how Japanese people in the 80s saw the Victorian era and vampires. I think it differs from the Western 80s vampire takes. Well, I think the Western 80s vampire takes were very gritty, very modern. You're looking like dark. You have like the whole punk vampire movement. Whereas this is very Victorian vampire classic movement, Jack the Ripper era. So it's almost like this is maybe a decade behind. Like this, we're still back in like the 60s, like Hammer horror era of vampires. So maybe the Japanese take on Western vampires was a couple decades behind, which happens with Eastern cultures. I know that was a big thing in Russia as well. You say that Araki named Dio after Ronnie James Dio actually makes more sense when he gets the Holy Diver type ability in part three. However, the author says in this book that he did not do that. He says he named Dio after God and literally nothing else. And he is upset that anyone thinks he named Dio after anything other than just literally God. That's what the author wants us to think, according to this book. Araki loves Italy and features Italian stuff in his works. Well, we noticed that from the whole Zepparelli movement with this guy. Why is my camera moving? I hate that. Come back over here, camera. Like if I lean over here, the camera will follow me, I think. The creator of this manga, from his author's notes and the things I've read about him as a person, he reminds me a lot of the creator of Hellsing, in that he admits that he was just doing what he thought was cool in the moment, referencing the things he thought were badass as he referenced them and not giving any deeper thought to them. He worked fast and loose with what he felt like in the moment. And I feel like those kinds of mangas between JoJo's and Hellsing is just like this sort of like id on paper, this just like consciousness of one man's thoughts of what's awesome. And that resonates with a certain group of people because they may be of a similar mindset. And when you're that sort of like vulnerable and raw in your art with not trying to like think too hard or do too hard, just do what you think is cool with what your personal like hyperfixations are or passions are, then you can create an art that a lot of other people that happen to be similar to you will also think is badass. Or young, impressionable people will be like, you tell me this is cool, so therefore I take it as cool, and they fall for it. I'll read you what he says about the name Dio, since you guys keep arguing. Word of God, this is what he says. According to the book, I mentioned this back when I was talking about Jonathan, but Dio was actually the one I wanted to draw most for this part 1. How far can a man's ambition drive him when he takes to the ultimate extreme? That's what I wanted to depict. I wanted his name to sound cool when paired with Jojo's. So I ended up going with Dio, which means God in Italian. I always hear theories about how I got his name from the Dio scooter, but that's not true. I'll just put that out there, along with another thing that people said wasn't true. In regards to how he contrasts with Jonathan, I wanted to tackle how you'd represent the ultimate villain as depicted against a symbol of justice. How exactly would he fall into that role of villain? People always love to compare who's stronger and who's cooler. You've got Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, Schwarzenegger versus Stallone. I wanted there to be that sort of contrast or struggle between Dio and Jonathan. Do you have any more questions that you want me to answer? I know you're talking amongst yourselves, and I encourage that. Please do have conversations that don't involve me. But any more questions for me about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure before we move on? Did I like the Jack the Ripper bit? Okay, so you know I work for Lindsay Ellis, who does a web series. And we did a series called Loose Cannon a while back where we would look at like popular characters like Jack the Ripper and see how Jack the Ripper is interpreted throughout like media. And when we did the Jack the Ripper episode, we didn't include JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And a lot of people commented on that video and were like, why didn't you include JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Talk about Jack the Ripper was it? So it's like, so it must be really interesting, right? So when I finally got to it and read it and it was like looking at it, I'm just like, this Jack the Ripper character has no character whatsoever. He has no personality. He's just like a mindless killing machine. So he was a cool bad guy for JoJo to fight. I like that the scalpel's like extruded from his body. I like that he hid in the body of a horse and then like popped out of the horse like surprise, bitches. But as a person, as a character, I didn't think there was very much to him. I didn't understand why he was the Ripper. I didn't understand like what his damage was, so I didn't think very much of him. I like that Jack the Ripper was there because it helped tie it into Victorian gaslamp fantasy. That's cool. Do I think the women should have been impossibly swole as the guys? You know what I was thinking as I was reading? Like, damn, these women are like stacked. Like the women were like stocky. They weren't like skinny little waifish Japanese like anime girls. They were like sturdy British like marms. I thought like even JoJo's wife, like at the end, I thought she was very like Let me see if I can find a picture of her. She, like, I didn't think the women were, you know, obviously they didn't have muscles on top of their muscles, but they I thought the women were pretty, like, well proportioned. If I can't find her in a minute, I'm gonna give up. Come on. Where's the lady? Where's the sexy lady? Show you a picture. Come on. Here's some of her, but I'm trying to find the picture of her body. Like, their name is Arena because it's, you know, callback to other vampire literature, except it's spelled with an I in the other vampire literature. Yeah, like Arena could kick your ass. She's tough lady. Where is she? I'll find her for you. And there's another one where she's just like, look how pretty she is. I was sad about Zappelli's death, but the fact that it was prophesized, I'm just like, okay, you know, fulfill your destiny, dude. You'll fulfill your destiny. Good for you. The kid's sister was kind of, and she's just like a girl. Yeah, all the other women in this died and ate their own babies, as you do. All right. Last chance. Last questions. You guys are talking a lot about JoJo, but you're not really asking me anything about JoJo. So I think we're about ready to move on. Here's the last question. Why is the camera moving? Stop that. I'm going to lean over here to get the camera to move. Yes, it worked. I feel like I've already answered this question. Will I check out more parts of JoJo? I'll read more books if more books are sent to me to my vampire library, as people like to send things to my vampire library, which is a thing you can do. I probably wouldn't seek it out on my own. But if you send it to me, of course I'm going to read it. I'm curious about watching the show. Like I said, I've been sent season 1, so I might watch that pretty soon. Not until after I come back on my trip, though. What did I think about the East meets West theme with the ripples and such? I liked that the East in the whole like martial art that they were doing was Indian martial arts and not Japanese or Chinese, because, you know, thinking of something that's made by Japanese people, you might assume they would be that, but no, it was Indian. That was cool. I thought the West was very fetishized, but, you know, it's the West's turn. Why not? It's fine. I'm not offended. How would I have preferred Jonathan to die? From a more grievous injury, like chop him in half or something? Like, not just 2 tiny holes in his neck. Like eviscerate him, like gut him. Like, Dio got literally chopped in half and he survived. Yet Jonathan has 2 tiny holes in his neck and he's like, I'm just gonna bleed out. I'm done. I'm dead. Like, you know, explode him or something. Explode him, please. Something. That's what I would have preferred. Unequivocally dead. Because when I saw him get those 2 tiny holes in his neck, I was like, He's not going to die. He's going to be fine. Surely he'll be fine. Oh, no, wait. The book is telling me he's not? What am I going to review after I come back? Good question. What is next for Vampire Book Club? So I put up a vote. So because I'm going on this trip, right, I'm going to be gone for 10 days. So it's 10 days that I can't concentrate on reading vampire books. So I have to read something in like half the month, whereas you all get the whole month to read this. So next up, I figured we'd read a YA book because YA books are usually a little bit faster to read. So I thought that would help. So I put up 3 books to vote from, and like by a landslide, the winner of the vote was this book, which is The Damned by Renee Adia. And The Damned is a sequel to The Beautiful, which we read for book month a couple months ago in book club. If you were part of book club, you may have read it or at least heard me talk about it. If you are not, if you are new to book club, you can go on my channel and look back at my past videos and find everything I said about this book. And now we're going to read the sequel. This is the first time we've actually read a sequel for Vampire Book Club and not a standalone book. To read this book, you will have had to have read this, or at least watched my video where I spoil everything for you so you're caught up so that you then can read this. And I did not think this book would win the vote because I thought people would be like, a sequel? Well, I didn't even read the first one, so why would I vote for this? But no, by a landslide, this book won. This is what people want to read. So this is The Damned. As we learned about The Beautiful, it is a vampire book set in Victorian New Orleans. You see this beautiful map in the end pages, based loosely on the real life vampire myth of the Casket Girls. This camera moving is driving me nuts. And in The Beautiful, there's a human girl with a vampire love interest. Though he's not really a vampire. He's a human love interest, but his like father figure is a vampire, and then at the end he becomes a vampire. And at the end of the book, the only reason she's allowed to live is they wipe her memories. And she's like, you don't remember vampires exist. And there's also werewolves, but they're like in the background and they don't really like factor in. So in this book, her memories have been wiped. She's starting over from scratch, but the dude, the love interest, has become a vampire. And also there's werewolves. And we're going to see where that goes. Interested. I like that the first book was red and the second book is purple because red and purple are my favorite colors. So The Beautiful and the Damned is a reference to like classic quotes. Yeah, I like that it has the skull on the cover. These are beautiful books. And thank you to the people who sent them to me because I did not buy these books for myself. They were gifts. And I appreciate that. You guys are great. The Damned. The cool thing about The Beautiful and the Damned by Renee Adia is that they're set in New Orleans in Victorian times, which is also where my favorite vampire series is set. The Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles, which you see here on my shelf. Now the camera's moving, but you know, up there. Yeah. So you have until August 13th to read The Damned, or to not read it and just like come hang out with us. If you want to join the Vampire Book Club because you're not a member yet, please join my Discord server. The link is in the description of this video. Once you join the Discord server, you go to like the bot rules page and it says like, if you want to join this part, click this link. If you want to join this part, click this link. So there's like a book emoji and that's what you click to join the book club. And then you're part of the book club and then you can follow along for all our discussion. You can read the book and share your thoughts. And if you say something interesting or ask me interesting questions, I will share those thoughts and questions here on our book club stream. I really appreciate everyone who shared their thoughts and feelings about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure while we were reading it because, yeah, there's a lot there. It's bizarre, that's for sure. I haven't any Anne Rice. What do you mean, so I haven't any Anne Rice? I have all Anne Rice. What is with vampires in New Orleans, you ask? Well, a long time ago, in 1973, a woman named Anne Rice wrote a book about vampires in New Orleans, and it was such a hit that everyone else decided to copy it. And now vampires in New Orleans are a thing. And New Orleans is considered a vampire mecca because Anne Rice did that back in 1973, before we were all born. Yes, there are real life legends about vampires who live in New Orleans. I have a nonfiction book about the vampire legends of New Orleans. There is a Count Saint Germain, there is a Casket Girls, there's a few other like real life vampires. Anne Rice grew up in New Orleans, so she had a lot of that occult influence in her like childhood psyche. So when she set her vampire book there, that was obviously an influence. There's no proof that any of those historical vampires were real because vampires are not real. But there are those legends. When you go to historical cities like New Orleans or Charleston or Savannah or New York, you can take ghost tours and they'll take you around to all the places that are supposedly haunted, where people have seen ghosts. There have been like occult happenings and sightings. And so in New Orleans, they have vampire tours where they take you around to all the places where like the historical vampires have happened. And the Count Saint Germain, one of the actual literal historical vampires, is a major character in this. He is an actual vampire in this book. And I'm assuming he comes back in this because he is the vampire that made the love interest in this book into a vampire. So now in this book, he is a vampire. What was I going to say at the end of last month's live stream before the technical difficulties? Okay, so last month's live stream, I was about to like spill the tea on the Anne Rice nonsense that's going on. And then I moved my webcam because I wanted to show you my Anne Rice collection on the top shelf of this bookshelf right here. And the webcam died. So then we went over to my Discord server and I had the whole conversation on the voice chat video stream on my Discord server, which if you were a member of my Discord server, you would have seen. But I'm guessing you, sir, were not. So the situation, which I've talked about multiple times by now, but if you're still interested, I'll talk about it again, is Anne Rice, the author of the Vampire Chronicles, this 18-book series, which you see up here, wants to make a TV show of her series. And she's wanted this for a long time. And she's like trying to find the right network, trying to find the right creators. She wants a lot of control over this TV series. She wants it to be her vision. She has this vision of this TV series that starts with the book The Vampire Lestat, which Lestat's the main character of the whole saga, right? So she wants to start with his tragic human backstory. Even though there are vampires older than him, she wants to start with his story and then start telling that chronologically. And then anytime we get to a new vampire who's older than him, like tell their backstory and flashback. And she has this like epic Game of Thrones style, quote unquote, TV show idea. And she got a network. Brian Fuller was going to be the show producer, and then they lost him. They lost a network, and now the rights to her entire catalog of the Vampire Chronicles and the Mayfair Witch series, which is part of the Vampire Chronicles, if you read them, they're necessary, have been bought by the AMC network. And the AMC network owns the rights. They can do whatever they want. Anne Rice still wants control. She wants to achieve her vision, but she sold the rights. She doesn't really have any power. So there was this announcement leaked to a kind of unreputable news source. So we don't know if it's a valid leak or not. And the leak was a casting call. And the casting call announced that AMC was doing an 8-episode miniseries or short series called Interview with the Vampire. And the premise of the show is that the Interview with the Vampire, like the movie you watched, happened in the 70s. But the interviewer was so high on drugs that he got the whole story wrong. So now that he's all grown up and he's like 60 years old, he wants to find that vampire again and re-interview him and tell the story right this time. And the story's totally different. So the story in Interview with the Vampire is of this vampire whose name is Louis. And he's a plantation owner, he's a slave owner, and then he like becomes a vampire and realizes slavery is wrong and frees all his slaves and goes off on like epic vampire adventures. So that's in the 1700s. So now the news story is that he's a black man in the 1910s, and he's not a slave owner because slavery's been abolished. He's a brothel owner. So he owns sex workers. He owns like 7 brothels. He's a brothel owner. And he's like a tough, no-nonsense guy. He's no longer our sensitive emo king. And he's going to tell his life story now of being like a 1910s brothel man in New Orleans. Which is a totally different story, totally different character. Extreme AU, which is interesting. It's fine. It's okay. I hope that they have Black people on the show running team so they can tell this like very racially charged story appropriately. I doubt it. I think it's going to be done all by white people, which is kind of upsetting. It's probably going to be very racist and horrible. But say they do it right. Say they miraculously do it right. That's fine. Whatever. This AU crack fic version of Interview with the Vampire, like Interview with the Vampire was wrong. We're going to retell it right. And we made up our whole AU own story of this original character. Tell his story in 8 episodes. It's still not the series that Anne Rice wanted. Anne Rice wanted the vampire Lestat's life story, not Louis. No matter how you change Louis and make him into a new character, whatever, she wanted Lestat's life story. And if we're not getting Lestat's life story, we're not getting the thing Anne Rice wanted, which makes me think that Anne Rice has lost complete control. They're taking control out of her hands. They're doing what they want because they bought the rights and they can do that. And Anne Rice is just like, her hands are tied. She's made zero comment from this leaked information, which may or may not be true. However, last time we talked, right before we talked, there was another article which was like published by multiple sources in multiple places that said several things. There's going to be a show called Interview with the Vampire. It's going to have 8 episodes. It's produced by AMC. Anne Rice is executive producer. Those things corroborate with that other thing that was leaked that was not corroborated, which makes me think that it's probably true. And even if they change their mind on some of those things, it's still an 8-episode series called Interview with the Vampire is not the show Anne Rice wanted, which makes me think we're not getting the thing that we've been hoping for all this time. So I don't mind that they're race bending the character. I don't mind that they're doing a totally random AU story. What I do mind is that Anne really had this idea for this like epic sweeping Game of Thrones style saga of all her books from start to finish in this order with these flashbacks that we're not going to get because they're clearly going in a different direction. If we were going to get both, I'd be fine. I'd be like, this sounds fun. Sure. Total random crackfic AU version of Interview with the Vampire. Bring it. I'm down. Let's see it. But the fact that it's at the cost of the thing that we actually wanted is disappointing. Yeah. Totally off topic and different direction from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But if you are a JoJo fan and a nice Anne Rice fan, you're my people. And that's why you're here. I love you. Yeah, it's like if they wanted to write just like an original vampire story, right? Like of a vampire character who's a brothel owner in the 1910s in New Orleans as a Black man, which I'm sure struggles and has problems. They should just write the story and like make a new vampire TV show. Don't make it Interview with the Vampire. But they got to attach the brand name recognition because they want to make money, and that's all they care about is making money. That's really all they care about. Now I'm catching up on the chat. Interview with another vampire. Exactly. Like, why does it have to be like, I'm going to interview the same vampire and tell it right this time? Nope. Yeah, I'm concerned that they will not keep the gayness. The fact that Louis is a brothel owner makes me think that they decided it needed a lot of sexy naked ladies in it. Maybe that's because they are making Louis gay, and Louis should be gay. And so they're going to put those sexy naked ladies in his brothels in the background scenes to compensate for the gay. Or maybe they're just going to make it not gay and just like lean full into the sexy naked ladies. I don't have high hopes. I don't know. I want it to be gay. Of course. No, all Anne Rice vampires are bi. Canonically, as soon as you become a vampire, you become separated from sex and gender, and you're just like completely bi. But TV is scared. So that's what I was going to say. I mean, I think that's mostly what I was going to say a month ago. It's been a month, so I may have forgotten what else I was going to go off about. I know I spoke much more at length about it in our Discord chat. If you would like to talk to me more often about Anne Rice or literally any other vampires ever, join my Discord, please, and talk to me about vampires there. It is free. It is free thanks to my Patreon patrons who fund my existence. I don't charge them for the Discord chat, but the fact that they fund my videos makes the Discord chat possible. Thank you to my patrons. Same with book club. Like, I don't charge Patreon for book club, but the fact that they fund the rest of my vampire videos makes book club possible. Yes, join the Discord. Discord is free. Anyone can join. You can join the book club, or you can just like hang out and talk about vampires. I mentioned last month that I was worried they were going to do a female Lestat. Okay, so back in 1992, 93, when they were casting the Interview with the Vampire movie that came out in 1994, starring Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. Before Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt were cast in those roles, they were considering making Lestat a woman, because that would make it less gay. I don't know who they were thinking of for Louis, but for Lestat, they were really thinking of Cher. And they really wanted Cher to be Lestat in the movie, so much so that they gave her the part. They hired her for the part. She wrote a song about it. She released the song as promotion for the fact that she was going to be in this movie as this vampire. This vampire song by Cher is literally about Lestat in Interview with the Vampire. And then somehow they wound up deciding, no, we're going to stick with it and make it a man, and he was Tom Cruise instead. But if they are going to be so scared of making it gay for this new TV show, and they have Louis as this brothel owner in 1910s, I could see them revisiting that female Lestat idea and having her be a vampire seductress who seduces Louis into being a horrible, horrible vampire that he's going to be emo about. But will he even be emo? Because the way the casting notice stated it, casting notice has not been verified. It could be a hoax. We don't know. He's like a tough guy now who's not emo anymore. Yeah, I mean, Cher would have been an awesome Lestat. Don't get me wrong. I would have loved to see that. But I still like canon Lestat, and Tom Cruise did an amazing job. He was so good. Adding Cher to a movie makes it less gay is a pretty interesting idea to try, right? Like, it still would have had the vibes, but yeah. And I don't know if how Anne Rice felt about that. I know that when Tom Cruise was cast, she was big mad because she thought Tom Cruise was like action hero pretty boy. She didn't think he could do like dark and sinister, but then he did, and he did it so well. Anyway, that's my Anne Rice rant. I could talk about Anne Rice for hours. You guys are lucky that this has not just become an Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles channel. That's where my heart is. That's where I would really be right now if I could. But I'll talk about things like The Damned and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, your naked, very sexy, homoerotic vampire boys. I saw you guys vaguely, like I could only skim the chat, mentioning their homoeroticism of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And yes, it is there. I noticed that as I was reading, like Jojo and Dio had this very like incesty pseudo brothers homoeroticism, like we are soulmates, we are the only ones worthy of each other. Like there's no sex in the story at all whatsoever, but I could see where fanfic is just one step away from putting it there, and I'm just like, yes, yes. Hold on. I have to ban a troll. Wow. I usually never have to ban anyone in these chats, but every once in a while. Oh, you say Jonah Dio is very big in the fandom. I can see that. I could see Jojo and Dio getting shipped in the fandom the same way like Zim and Dib are shipped. I could see it. I could definitely see it. Especially with at the end where they become like, Dio's like, I respect you now. You are the only one worthy of me. I will take your body and make it mine because no other body is worthy of me because you were the only one who defeated me. So you're the only one worthy. It's very sexy. I can see it. Well, I am all out of wine and all out of questions to answer. This is your last chance to ask me questions about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, about Renee Adia's works, The Beautiful and the Damned, or about Anne Rice, because apparently I'm a whore for her and I'll talk about her until the cows come home. I'm gonna wait for the chat to catch up. Very sad that there's no wine left. Some JoJo fans are too much. I don't think those were JoJo fans I blocked. I think they were just like general jerks. Alucard versus Lestat. Versus in what way? Like punching at each other? Like Lestat wouldn't do that, first of all. And why would Alucard? I guess Alucard would attack Lestat if his boss told him to. But Lestat would just like be like, whoa, let's talk. Like Lestat's a lover, not a fighter. Like, yeah, he has godlike powers and he could like kick anyone's ass, but like Alucard is also has godlike powers in a different way. So, oh no. I don't think they would fight. I think they would talk. I think they would like talk until the dawn came. All right. Doesn't seem like you have any more thoughts or questions for me. So please read The Damned by Renee Adia. If you haven't read The Beautiful, you need to read that first. They're YA books, so even though they look kind of big, they're fast, easy reading. They're set in New Orleans in Victorian times. So yes, thank you. You have until August 13th to read The Damned. Our live stream will be around that time. Join the Discord server or not, just come back here. But if you want to talk about the book before the live stream, join the Discord server. It's free. Anyone can join. I am going away tomorrow. I am going to Arizona to the Grand Canyon, essentially the Colorado River. That's where I'm going. I'm going to be on a raft on the Colorado River for 8 days. There's no cell service. There's no Wi-Fi. I will not be in my Discord server. I will not be on Twitter. I will not be responding to emails. I will not be responding to YouTube comments. I am going to be gone. I'm going to be off the grid. I'm a little bit scared. But I'm going with Lindsay and our other coworkers that we work on the PBS It's Lit series that we do together. And it's kind of like a work retreat. We're going to commune with nature and like do work for PBS. That's where I'm going to be. So I'll see you in 2 weeks. Behave. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. If you have questions or thoughts for me, I'll get back to you after the 26th. Yes, I'm very worried about the sun. The sun is actually the thing I'm most worried about because I don't go outside. I don't go out in the sun. I'll wear sunblock, and I bought a lot of long sleeve shirts, which, it's going to be 110 degrees there the whole week, but I'm wearing long sleeves. I do not want to be sunburned. But if I come back and I've got like tan lines, I'm sorry. I know it's very not vampiric. I'm scared of the sun. The sun's the thing I'm the most scared about. Yeah. And if you never hear from me again, I died of sun exposure or something, I'm sure. I'm not nervous. I'm getting on a plane first thing tomorrow morning, and that's it. I'm gone. Bye. Until then, enjoy. Have a good night. Happy vampires. Read books. Join my book club. Talk to the other people in the book club. My Discord server has about 600 people in it, and they are all very cool. You have a very cool Discord server. Thank you for joining the Vampire Book Club. Until next time, good night.